got less resources this year. We know we will have less next year and the year after, and we're expected to do more. And we're not going to be able to do that by just carrying on the way we've been going. We have to find different ways of doing it.
Well, when I went into that program, did I find out how little I knew or what? Because it opened my eyes to a lot of things.
I believe this is probably one of the only churches, perhaps, I don't know, in Wandsworth, maybe London, maybe the country, that is actually doing something like this.
I stop and question, and I deal with poetry workshops, and some of those brilliant, beautiful poems written have been written in institutions that they call mental health institutions.
This is people from ethnic minorities living in Britain, particularly those who are black, experience a variety of practical disadvantages.
I have found that when I talk to white people, they often object to this and point out that any group tends to think of itself as the normal one, that it's human nature to do so. No doubt there is some truth in this, but when the apparent normality of white people is put together with the cultural power they have in contemporary society, as well as over the centuries, then we are talking about a much more insidious phenomenon.
I think that judging from some of the comments that I've been hearing, I think it's a very important event. Any event that brings the community together to talk about mental illness and to talk about how we can deal with it and approach it and interact around some of the issues with it. Then it's an important event. And then to have people within the NHS here as well. So it's all kind of stakeholders that are present. That's good. It's just bringing people together to hear from different angles and different perspectives.
We need to work together to support people with mental health problems, but also to support well-being within the wider community. We know that people from black backgrounds are more likely to be detained in hospital. We need to challenge ourselves about why that is and what we can do about that in the future. I think one of the key things for me is really linking in with the community networks in Wandsworth to ensure that we're working to help people remain well, but also if they become unwell that we support them early in their diagnosis or in their illness, not to the point where they go into crisis and have to be admitted to hospital.
You know, there's some of this about we have to do some things differently. It's happening here in Wandsworth. It really is. Some of this is happening. Small scale, and we need to build it. There's a guy at the end said, well, where can people go? I see people hanging out on the streets. And so I think, you know, how do we use community assets to have things that are happening in the day? It's not about coming up to Springfield Hospital and having day centres where people sit around. There's got to be more creative things that can happen.
But trying to get away from thinking traditionally about mental illness, I thought I would break it down, and also to get over the fact that you don't have to be, as we would say, stark raving mad to have mental ill health. A whole general feeling that you are not comfortable most of the time has an ill effect on your mental health.
Well, I have to say that white people tend to be a bit ambivalent about it because it's quite challenging, particularly challenging white people about their racist thoughts. It's not easy to get people to look at that. They're more likely to own to feeling guilty about racism of the past and, you know, the way society is. Particularly white liberal people, you know, people who sort of think of themselves as being broad-minded and not racist and so on. But I think they've got further to go.
So, I mean, I think that it has made a big difference. More and more people have been aware about mental health. But also, it's not just theoretically, but as we heard today, there are some practical projects that came out of it. So many people have been trained and they have become more proactive and they are leading on things. So there are work individually and family groups and community-wise. So the community itself is taking a lead and becoming proactively and delivering.
Well, I'm a psychologist, so I would say everyone is a product really of their context and their community and their experiences. The biological element for me would always be something that would be less important or less significant. So I think we should always look at people's context. I think what's really helpful is to realise how the trauma endures through many years and to understand those experiences. And I really loved all the work on attachment theory and the importance of that, because I think there is a risk that as resources become reduced, people will rely more heavily upon the briefer treatments in terms of time for professionals. So medication is always going to be something that's going to be available to a lot of people, but to have the space and the time to think together with a therapist who understands and who is aware of those issues, I think is really key.
So with all of the statistics we have about the overrepresentation of ourselves in mental health institutions and prisons, I think for everybody we can take away, well, now what can I do? And I think everybody has gone away with something tangible to take away from, well, this is what I can do.
I think the key things were around the impact that fractures in families have on children and how you take that trauma through your life. But I think the other key thing really was around the work that's being done in Wandsworth around working with children from BME backgrounds to give them opportunities, particularly in the summer holidays, and also with families around family therapy, both within the Families programme but also with the Black Pastors Network.
And the answer lies in how do we do things differently with communities to try and provide some of the things that we can't do. And some of the presentations we've heard today are just fantastic examples of what can happen to do that. You know, it's not all about the state and statutory sector services doing things.
I think there was something here for every age group. Something here for young people, teenagers, the young 20s, if you're a middle-ager. There's something here for you if you're an elder. Something to take away. And I think also it wasn't just theory. It's more of right now. We can actually do something. We can actually get our teeth into doing something.